that we're starting to develop with the project. And we are very pleased that iNACOL, which all of you are members of, recently has joined our project as a supporting organization. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Karl Nelson, to talk a little bit about how we're defining OER.
Yeah, hi, thanks a lot, Jennifer. So my name is Karl Nelson. I'm the Director of the Digital Learning Department at the Washington State Education Office, the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. And yes, that is a mouthful. So I want to spend just a few minutes kind of talking through, both kind of what is OER, why is this interesting, and then what are we specifically doing in the project. And I'm guessing that a number of you probably already have a handle on kind of what is OER. But I'm just going to talk through it for a couple minutes from the perspective of both online and blended learning. One of the hats I wear here in this state is around OER, but one of the other hats that I wear is around online learning. And so this is a topic that's kind of near and dear to my heart. So when we're thinking about open educational resources, I think the best way to think about it is kind of what does OER give a teacher the right to do? And there are 5 things. And this is something that it has been developed over a number of years by a man named David Wiley, who's actually also been involved in the K-12 OER Collaborative. So definitely giving him credit for this. But the first thing that OER gives you the right to do is to retain the materials. And this is really interesting because when you're talking about commercial, blended, and online learning content, those products are usually essentially leased to you, often on kind of a per-user basis. And so once that contract's up, you lose access to the materials. So you have to continue to pay, usually at kind of an annual contract, in order to continue to access the materials. The other thing I've seen in kind of previous jobs is you'll be working with a vendor, you'll get a great kind of introductory price, and then as the years go on, that price goes up and up and up, and you're kind of locked in. And with OER, you have the right to retain that content and to continue to use it over time and not have to continue to pay a licensing fee each year. The next of the 5 R's here is reuse. And this is really the right to use that content in a whole bunch of different ways. And so that means that you can load content into your learning management system. It means you can deliver it in a whole bunch of different ways, whether that's to e-readers or tablets or through the web or what have you. The next R is revise, and this is obviously the right to to make changes to the actual content, and that could mean translating it into another language. It could mean going in and actually modifying the content itself. But with OER, you have the right to do that in a way that you really don't when you're buying off-the-shelf commercial online and blended learning products. And then the next one is around remixing. And so when you're using OER, you now have the ability to combine one piece of OER with another piece of OER to to make something new. And that could mean that you're incorporating a bunch of Khan Academy videos into content that somebody else created. It could mean you're doing all sorts of things, but you have the ability to do that. And then, redistribute just allows you to share what you've done with others so others can build on that work that you've done. So OER, I think, is a really, really important piece of the online and blended learning landscape. So let's talk for a second about open licenses and what that actually means. And the first thing that I hit all the time when I'm out talking to schools is this confusion between free and open. And there's all sorts of free stuff out there on the web, really easy to find. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have the rights to do the things I was just talking about in terms of retaining or remixing or modifying or any of that. It needs to have some sort of an open license on it. Just because it's freely available on the web doesn't mean it's OER. But the kind of gold standard here are licenses from the Creative Commons. And we are in the K-12 OER Collaborative, we're using the Creative Commons Attribution License, often called CC BY. And this simply requires attribution for the original author. But it's really the most flexible of the Creative Commons licenses outside of flat out putting it into the public domain. And this is, I think, really going to help us maximize the ways that we can share this material when it's out there, and the ways that educators are going to be able to use the resources. We have a couple of questions here, and so right below your name in the participants box, there's a little check mark. And we were just curious, who's on this call has had a chance to use OER in a classroom? And so if you can just do the kind of yes, no real quick. And then after you've done that, if you've had a chance to make use of some OER, if you want to use the chat feature to let us know what one of your favorite ones is, I think that'd be helpful. So far it's running about neck and neck in terms of that first question. And we'll just give folks a moment to type an answer in. So I'm not sure if everybody can see the answers to the poll, but we have half of you saying that you've done it, and the other half have not used OER before. And there's actually a pretty sizable number of you that didn't actually give us an answer, but that's fine. And in terms of the chat, you can see a whole bunch of different resources coming through. And yeah, those are definitely some of the ones that we've had a chance to take a look at. So feel free to continue to type into that chat window. And I'm going to go ahead and move forward and give you a little bit of background on the project itself. So why are we doing this? The first big reason is to give an additional option out there to schools and to school districts. So I'm in a state that is very much a local controlled state, and I know that pretty much everybody likes to say that that's true. But our interest here from a state perspective, kind of why we're involved in this, is we want to make sure that our local schools have the best options that they can to choose from when they're choosing the instructional materials that they want to use with their students. And I'll talk in just a sec about how we have some concerns about the existing options really aren't hitting the mark, which is leading to us doing this work. The next reason why we're doing this project, and this is kind of often I think the first thing that people think about when they're talking about open educational resources, but this ability to lower costs for instructional materials. Now, there are still obviously costs whenever you're delivering materials. If you're going to print it out, there's printing costs. If you're going to do it online, there are obviously costs around the technology, but much lower costs than going out and finding a commercial option. And of course, you have all those additional things that we just talked about in terms of ability to revise and retain and so forth. I'm really interested in this idea that if we can lower costs for instructional materials, districts can focus their spending that they would have used to buy commercial products on things like teacher professional development or additional technology. And if we think about what it takes to make the transition to blended learning, for example, you're really not going to be able to do that without a robust technology infrastructure, and for sure you're not going to be able to do that without teacher professional development, so they can learn how to teach in a blended environment. And at least in my state, cost is it's a big issue, and it's a big kind of blocker to folks making transitions to use more online content. And so being able to do this for less money, I think, is really, really attractive. The next big reason why we're doing this is around alignment to state standards. And there have been a couple of reports that have come out fairly recently that I think highlight this. And so if you haven't had a chance to look at the edreports.org website, I would definitely recommend taking a look at that. They just, I want to say last week, released their first reviews of 20 K-8 math series. And they were looking to see how well they were aligned to the Common Core state standards. And basically 1 of 20 existing commercial products had decent alignment, and the rest were were some version of not very well aligned at all. So there's definitely cause for concern there. The other one, which is the longer one, is a study out of Michigan State University, and a few of the things they found is that in U.S. K-8 textbooks, they're skipping about a quarter of the required math topics for that grade level, and about half of a typical classroom K-8 textbook focuses on grade-appropriate math, which is to say that the existing instructional materials market may really not be meeting our needs when we're talking about alignment to state standards. And so that's a huge, huge concern. The next reason is around the adaptability of the open educational resources. And this is interesting because there are lots of, I shouldn't say lots, there are some really good looking open educational resources already out there. And what we found is they're often under one of the more restrictive Creative Commons licenses, and that makes it hard to do that adaption and remix and some of those more interesting aspects of OER. And so it just makes it hard to do that, and we're hoping for something that is much, much easier to do. We're also looking forward to creating basically an ongoing sustainability process to keep these materials up to date over time. We don't want this to be kind of a one-shot deal where we create a bunch of materials, throw it out there, and then don't ever think about maintaining and improving this over time. And so we're definitely doing this with an eye towards the long term. The next reason is we want materials that are really well designed for the digital environment. And I talked about some of the existing OER out there, and the thing is, a lot of it's delivered as like static PDFs. It's not particularly interactive or flexible. I mean, there's nothing wrong with PDFs. It's just not, I think, really what we want when we're talking about engaging next generation blended and online learning materials. And so we're really looking for something that's going to be much more interactive. And then the last thing is we want something that is really comprehensive. So a lot of the existing open educational resources, and you can go to various OER repositories out there and get lesson plans and videos and kind of individual things, but it's often this kind of small grain size, and that means that that a teacher is going to have to piece that together from scratch. We're looking for something that's going to be comprehensible. We're also looking, it's going to be comprehensive, and we're also looking for something that that is beyond just the core text, and it comes with a lot of the additional supports that that a teacher is going to need to really be effective. A lot of the existing resources we see out there are just the core text, and And so we're looking for something more, essentially. And so going through our kind of list of what we're looking for, like I said, a complete set of instructional materials. So it's not just a lesson plan, not just a video. We want the full meal deal. We want teacher materials that are going to help to inform and support implementation. You know, whether that looks like a traditional kind of teacher's edition or it's more kind of integrated, we'll see as we get into the kind of full development phase what exactly that looks like. We're looking for instructional adaptations for students with varying needs. So could be on the high end in terms of highly capable, could also include special ed, English language learners, things like that. And this is another one where I think we're seeing existing options, especially in the OER space, don't do that adaptation for different types of students very well. They tend to just focus on the core text. You know, the next thing is we're looking for something that is, you know, that is research-based and is really going to drive good student you know, teaching and learning. We're looking for an assessment strategy and kind of all the things that come along with that as well. And I talked about this just a moment ago, the kind of interactive and multimedia pieces to this. And we're also looking for, you know, resources for, you know, families. I think anyone who's ever tried to help their kids with math homework would definitely appreciate having some additional supports and, you know, some additional options. And so we're looking to include those as well. On the English language arts side of things, looking for appropriately complex text sets, and on the math side of things, we're looking for materials that have that good balance of conceptual understanding and, you know, procedural fluency, and then actual authentic applications in terms of classroom activities and rich tasks and so forth. So that's kind of what we're looking for. One of the questions that I have for you guys, and you can just go ahead and put this in the chat window, is do you feel like we missed anything? Or is there anything from the perspective of an online teacher or a blended learning educator that we should really be sure to be aware of as we move through the development phase of this project? So go ahead and put any ideas or comments into the chat window. And while you're typing, I'll talk a little bit more kind of how we've broken the project up. So we see kind of, you know, breakpoints on the English language arts side of things, and I should say we're really pretty focused on English language arts and math at this point. This is a project that may at some point move into other content areas, but right now we're focused on ELA and math. And on the ELA side of things, we've broken that out into kind of a K2 grade band, 3-5, middle school, and then high school. On the math side, it's K through 5, 6 through 8, and then in high school, we're going to do two versions. One is going to do that kind of integrated, or often called international pathway, and then the other option is going to be the more traditional pathway, Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2. The way that we're actually going out doing this is we as a group of states and supporting organizations are going to look to, you know, to contractors to actually develop the materials. We don't necessarily have all the answers ourselves, and we obviously have lots of ELA experts. We have, you know, math experts and like, you know, obviously other experts in this. So we don't necessarily feel like we have all the answers, and so we are going to try to use the free market to get the best solution at the best price. And so in November, we launched an RFP, and we received the full proposals from that in mid-February or so. And right now we're in the process of evaluating the various responses, and we'll talk a little bit more in just a moment about kind of what that evaluation process looks like. what we're going to do from there is we're going to ask a few of the developers to create sample prototypes for us. And then we'll evaluate those and use that to determine who we're going to move forward with into a full development phase. We've been really, really happy, I should say, with the response that we've seen, and it's been, you know, for me at least, it's been a lot of fun to read through the proposal. If you're interested in taking a look at the RFP, it's still online at K-12 OER Collaborative.org, and you can read through it, see exactly the specs, exactly what we're planning on doing, and that's all there. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jennifer, who's going to talk about our process for ensuring that what we're creating is really, really high quality. Because it doesn't really matter if this stuff's open and free and you can revise it if it's not any good to start with. So we're trying to create the best materials that we possibly can, and then bring all those great advantages of OER to the table. So
thanks,
Jennifer,
Karl.
take it away.
And before I delve into the quality piece, I just wanted to add to Karl's comments. In addition to the ed reports and the other studies that he did, at the beginning of our project, we did conduct a needs assessment survey among the 3 initial states, which were Washington, Idaho, and Utah, among several thousand educators, and the overwhelming results of that study were that the educators were looking for these type of comprehensive instructional materials that reflected the shifts of the Common Core in their classrooms. So just sort of more data points to support the need for what we're trying to create with this project. So in terms of the quality piece, as Karl mentioned, we're in the midst of our proposal review process. How we've decided to go about that in order to ensure quality is that our steering committee consists of people from a number of the states that are involved, as well as most of the participating organizations that were listed. And so the proposals we received are broken down into 3 sections: a management piece, costs, and then content. So the management and cost pieces of the proposal are being reviewed by our steering committee members, taking a look at proposed budgets and team structures and things like that. And then we have the content proposals being reviewed by educators in 9 of our 12 states. So each of those state leads put together a team of 6 to 10 reviewers and involve their math and ELA content leads on the state level, and put together reviewers that were subject matter experts in ELA or math to do some of the reviews. And what we're in the midst of doing right now is pulling all of those reviews together to come up with and identify which vendors we want to go into contract with to create these rapid prototype sample units that Karl mentioned. So it's a way of sort of checking and balancing different aspects to come up with some really high quality choices for us to go into contract with and really get an opportunity to see what it's like to work with these folks. And one of the reasons we're very excited about using this rapid prototype model is that it will give us an opportunity to work with a number of teams across the different grade bands over the course of a couple of months in their development of the units, and we feel sort of much better about making a decision having worked with folks for a few months and seeing their products before we commit to the year-long development, just to be sure there's a good timeline, good feedback circles, and obviously that the quality comes out at the level that we're looking for. So in terms of the rapid prototypes, we will be selecting those vendors before the end of March. And then they will have several months to develop these 2 to 3 week units in their grade bands. We are going to be selecting a number of educators, which are going to be nominated by the participating states, to actually do the review of those units when we get ready to select the year-long contractors. We're going to be using Achieve's Equip rubric, which some of you may be familiar with. That's an alignment rubric that is very well regarded to measure how well materials are aligned to the Common Core state standards. And we're in fact partnering with Achieve to deliver a training to our educators and to help calibrate them for the review of the rapid prototypes. And we're also partnering with Student Achievement Partners, which is an organization that was founded by some of the authors of the Common Core, to help guide us in terms of making sure that when we do evaluate the rapid prototypes, and even during the evaluation, providing some calibration to the vendors around what we are actually looking for, so that we in the end don't end up with materials, as others have. We would like to have our materials reviewed by Ed Reports type organizations and make sure that we are, the result are materials that are well aligned and are very useful for educators. So that will take us through the rapid prototype in terms of the quality and how we're going to make sure that these materials are well aligned and actually contain all of the different aspects that Karl outlined before in terms of the types of materials that we're looking for. So in terms of the quality during the development phase, as I mentioned, we'll be using this team of teacher reviewers who will be selected from an application process. So we have made the criterion for being a reviewer quite clear and available online. And we will be taking those applications and then selecting those educators that have experience with the standards and hopefully have some experience with the EQUIP rubric, as each unit will be evaluated with the EQUIP rubric. When we get into the full course development, we will also be using the IMET tool, which is a tool more intended to look at complete year-long courses, and you can find that at achievethecore.org. So we're going to also be with our year-long process. We're going to be selecting a much larger team of teacher reviewers that are not only going to be from our 12 participating states, but we are going to open that up to educators nationwide to apply to be part of that. Of course, we're excited to have the 12 states involved, but we're always looking to welcome additional states and educators that have a particular interest in this piece. We would welcome your submission of an application for the year-long process. And there will be a more sort of comprehensive year-long development with oversight and collaboration and feedback in the development of the materials during the year. And we will be paying attention to progressions both within the full courses as well as the articulation vertically between the grade bands, so that when these materials are ready and a school district is considering adoption, and we obviously want to make sure that our vendor in K-5 has had conversations with the 6-8 vendor so that there is articulation between those and that it becomes a package that makes sense for a district to think about adopting. In terms of sustainability, as Karl mentioned, one of the strong benefits of OER is this ability to remix and to modify in a much more rapid time frame than we have been able to with traditional curricular materials. So our plan is that we will be offering a free master version of all of these materials that come out of the K-12 Collaborative. And then we will be having an ongoing improvement cycle where folks can give feedback from the various states or districts that are involved, and we will be maintaining that master version for the first couple of years. We're still determining what that may look like after the first 2 to 3 year period in terms of funding and how states may participate, but we are committed to leveraging the benefits of OER, which is that we'll be able to quickly iterate and improve on materials based on educator feedback and scores on tests on the materials to just make sure that they are being improved in rapid time. And we've seen, for example, in Utah, where there's been some adoption of some open science textbooks, they're gathering educators on a yearly basis, providing feedback, doing an iterative process, and so that the next year the materials are greatly improved as opposed to sort of waiting for a 7 to 10 year traditional cycle. So we're quite excited about the sustainability plan and the option of sort of keeping that update for different educators to use. In terms of our distribution of the materials, as I mentioned, we will be making the materials available, a master version on a platform to be determined, but it will be some type of open repository. The original files are going to be in the EPUB 3 format, but they will be transformed into a number of different formats. Obviously, PDF if you need to be printing them. They'll be able to be uploaded into various LMS systems. And then we also are in conversations with a number of different platforms, both in the OER space and also in sort of the private sector space, people who are really interested in having these materials and helping us spread them widely and making them accessible. So we're excited that we believe that they're going to be easy to find and use and able to be uploaded into the systems that your district may already be employing so that you'll be able to adopt them fairly seamlessly. In terms of how you can help, you can certainly stay in touch with the project by following us at our Twitter handle, which is at K-12 OER. We also have a mailing list sign up on our website at K-12 OER Collaborative.org. We will be announcing applications to be a reviewer here, so if you yourself or folks that you know you think would be good candidates for reviewers, we certainly hope you'll send them our way because we're really looking to get the highest quality reviewers as part of this project to ensure that we end up with the materials that we're all striving for. And we would certainly love feedback from you. As Karl asked a couple of questions, another question we would love to hear about is, how would you like to use OER in your blended learning or on your online courses? What types of materials would be useful to you? I know that there's some activity going on in the chat, and some of you may have answered some of these questions, but to the extent that you have thoughts on this, we would love to hear it so we can be sure that our project, as we're still in the early phases, is able to meet the needs of educators like those of you who are on the webinar today. We've listed some additional OER resources for those of you that are newer to the OER space that we think provide some excellent background materials. There was a paper that iNACOL put out around OER and collaborative content development and also around state policy around OER and K-12 education. Those are both very informative publications. CETA, which is the State Educational Technology Directors Association, recently came out with a study about reimagining the K-12 textbook in a digital age that has a lot of great information about how OER works. And in fact, Achieve has just recently released their state policy recommendations around OER, and I believe they're also giving a webinar as part of Open Education Week around the state policy later today. So both their paper and their webinar could be interesting resources for you to look into. And with that, I think we're going to open it up for questions. Karl, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, well, so one question that I threw in the chat window is in terms of the kind of formats and platforms, is there any specific things that you guys are currently using and you want to make sure that we're aware of so we can add that to the list? Feel free to throw that in the chat window, and we'd love your feedback there. And beyond that, feel free to ask us any questions you have.
Folks, if you want to raise your hand and ask a question, I can hand you the mic, or you can please type questions in the chat box as well.
I see a question around whether we partner with other OER collaboratives. To be honest, I'm not familiar with many other OER collaboratives. I know of other OER developers. Is there someone in particular that you know about that think we should be talking with? Because we'd certainly be open to conversations. In terms of whether we're doing anything related to STEM, We decided to start this project with ELA and math because of the transition to those new state learning standards and the market demand for new materials that reflected those shifts. I think our hope is that if this project works out the way that we are all hoping to achieve, that then we will move on to other subjects, including some of the STEM subjects.
And just going back to the previous question, I thought I'd bring up the slide that lists all the various organizations that have been involved, so far. And we're always happy to add more. So if there are organizations out there that that want to join us and work with us, we're very open to that. Pun intended. I know OER jokes are probably not the best jokes out there, sorry. I'll also say we're happy to have other states join us as well. The fact that we have 12 is just kind of an arbitrary number, and it's who we've contacted in various other states. And if you're in a state agency or folks in a state agency and you'd like to be involved, we're open to that too. Timeline of the rollout is the next question that we see. So we are going to be through what we're calling the rapid prototype phase of the project by the end of June. So we're going to have the reviewers come together to review those little kind of rapid prototypes at the end of June. And at that point, we will be able to enter into contracts with developers for the full development. We're expecting that development phase to take up to a year. There may be some developers that are able to move faster, but we've said we want it done in a year. So we're looking at about, what is that, maybe 15 months from now, 16 months from now?
Right. We're hoping to have the materials available for the 2016-17 academic year. And I'll add, in terms of, we haven't totally fleshed out this, how this may look, but if the rapid prototype units look really good and we think are useful on their own, we may push them out beforehand to give folks a taste of what's to come. Well, if there are no other questions, I think we might turn it back over to Maya from iNACOL for some closing comments and I think some upcoming webinars.
Great, thank you so much. I just wanted to call your attention to some of our upcoming webinars. Next week, on Thursday, we have master teachers from Better Lesson joining us. We have 3 master teachers joining us from 3 different schools, so join us for that. Our next month's leadership webinar will be highlighting our recently released performance-based funding report, and we'll be joined by Susan Patrick, who's the iNACOL President and CEO, Justin Amanda, and Steve Kosakowski, who are all authors of the report, and Steve, who is a good example of a performance-based model. And then also following the next week, April 16th, we'll have a teacher talk focused on developing and implementing a hybrid rotational model. And Ken and Colette will be joining us from Lancaster Lebanon Intermediate Unit. So you can register for all of those via our website, and we look forward to hosting more of these learning sessions. So our last call for any questions for Jennifer, Karl, and I see Barbara, you just joined us as well. So last call for questions. Okay, well, thanks again. Contact information was shared earlier, and feel free to follow up with any questions that you might think of. And this is being recorded, so I will send this link out and post it on our website. And again, thank you from iNACOL. We appreciate you joining and helping support open education resources.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thanks for being here today.
Great, thank you.